For years, when it came to keeping up with the current gaming landscape, I was constantly stuck in the dreaded pit of procrastination. Of course, I had my favourites that I kept on coming back to, but very few new games were making their way onto my playlist. Sure, some of the big tentpole AAA games often caught my interest, but the subcategory that suffered the most from this were indie games. No, that's not right. Further back, one more time, yeah, perfect. Indie games would always pop onto my radar, but inevitably vanish into my rearview mirror, forever taking refuge in the backlog I call a collection. But today, that changes. Today, I not only play an indie game that I've been excited for, but review it too. And what better game to start with than the debut title developed by Shared Memories, Billy Basso, and published by Video Game Dunkey's new company, Big Mode. A game they like to call Animal Well. The sole developer of Shared Memory, Billy Basso would begin work on and off on the first build of Animal Well all the way back in 2017. It wouldn't be until 2022 that Billy would switch gears and focus in on the game's development. Summer Games Fest 2022 was the first time I personally remember seeing the game, before it was announced to be the first game published by YouTuber Video Game Dunkey's new company Big Mode later that year. The following couple of years would be mostly silent, barring a few new teasers here and there. Eventually heading into 2024, we would be blessed with a 9th of May release date. And when that day came, we finally got to play it. But I bet you're wondering, what is the Animal Well? Well, I'm glad you asked. Animal Well is a game that firmly places itself within the Metroidvania subgenre of games. But if you want to get even more specific, people like to refer to it as a Metroidbrania. I'd never heard of this term until playing this game, but it basically seems to be the more logic or puzzle-focused version of a regular Metroidvania. Think of games like Tunic, The Witness, or Outer Wilds. The game has no obvious story, no obvious direction, no obvious anything. And that's the beauty of it. It's because of this that it's actually really hard to talk about the game without spoiling a lot of its cool secrets. So I'll give all of you guys this one warning. If at any point during this review you feel like playing Animal Well and haven't yet, turn my video off and go play it. I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't at least strongly recommend you did that. I'm imagining a lot of people that will watch this video though are players just like me that want to see another player absolutely gush about it. And trust me, I will. But if you haven't played it, again, I will spoil everything about it. So be careful. Now that we've covered that, let's start playing. When you start the game, you're birthed from a bulb of some description, and as crazy as it sounds, without even realizing it, the first secret of the game has already popped up, but we'll get back to that when it's actually relevant. For now, we travel through the tutorial of sorts. We learn the basic platforming mechanics, as well as how switches work, which will be the bulk of the puzzles in the main game. We also pick up our first item, the firecracker. Using this will give you the ability to destroy the face ghosts that haunt certain rooms in the game. It also does a good job of showing us exactly what the visual identity of this game is. At first glance, it seems to be mostly comprised of gorgeous pixel art, but it also has a dynamic lighting system, which gives the environments a very unique feeling. Seeing practically real smoke and light expelled from the firecrackers over pixelated models was a sight to see, and it doesn't stop being that way. The game also has a CRT filter on by default at the start. On my first playthrough, I left this on to get the intended experience, but after that, I found myself turning it off just so I would get a better view of the game. The secrets in the well can quite literally be just a single pixel out of place on the map, something the filter can sometimes block you from seeing. I still recommend trying to keep the filter on as long as you can, but I did think it was still worth pointing out that even myself turned it off after a while. After completing the tutorial, we climb up a ladder and find ourselves in the main room of the game, officially entering the first layer of the well. Just before leaving the tutorial section, we obtained a map that'll update us as we play the game. Standard Metroidvania fare. The map isn't great. It could use another zoom in function, and it can be pretty difficult to decipher where certain rooms are until late in the game when you're so familiar with the well you rarely need the map anyway. But for now, it'll do. Now the game really becomes open for you to explore. With 4 distinct directions to take, the first question you may ask yourself is which way is better. Any 4 of these routes can be done in any order, but you will need to dip in and out of each to get the tools necessary to complete these levels. Using the map, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell that the 4 flames that we can see are definitely points of interest, probably indicating the end of each level, but to get to them, it'll take more than just some fancy platforming. This is where the items come into play. Excluding the firecracker, there are 4 distinct items used for the main part of the game. The bubble wand, the the yo-yo, the slinky, and the disc. The bubble wand was the first item out of the 4 that I came across, and it changed my life. Using it can spawn a bubble that you can use as a temporary platform. This is all well and good at first, as it allows you to make massive strides and jumps that you normally wouldn't, but what you may quickly realize is just how easy it is to chain bubble after bubble, essentially making your potential limitless. The well itself is a bit cramped and full of vines that will pop the bubble, so it's not like you can just go anywhere. But this strategy did help me in some pretty dire situations. And while in some other games this may be considered cheese, it becomes very obvious that stuff like this is specifically placed in the game for you to discover. As broken as it may seem, it's no mistake that this unlimited bubble strat exists in the game. The disc was the next item I got, and okay, maybe we'll come back later. Since I wanted to avoid whatever awaited me in that section, heading into the northeastern section of the map will give us yet another new item, the Slinky. This item is basically a glorified remote button pusher, but with a few extra quirks. Setting it down before a set of stairs will cause it to slink down to the bottom. Puzzles will have you timing and positioning it correctly to press buttons. Just don't press any red ones. Yeah, those guys hate red. Before getting the flame, we need to get past the... Okay, so yeah, this game isn't all puzzles. If it wasn't clear from the terrifying dog ghost trying to kill us before, there is an element of survival horror here. And if you get confused when I say horror, trust me, it can feel that way sometimes. You don't beat the bosses as you would a typical game, however. Usually it still is a puzzle or platforming challenge. Other times it's just about leaving the room they're in as quickly as possible with your yo-yo still attached. When we finally give the chameleon a bad case of indigestion, we are bestowed the first of 4 mystical flames. And then we just, I don't know, put it in our pockets? The anatomy of our little character doesn't even explain how we can use all these items, but yeah, it must be deep pockets. I hopped over to the right and obtained the yo-yo, and I have to point out that this section was absolutely gorgeous. My first playthrough of the game was on my Switch, mostly in handheld mode, and the OLED screen just makes the blacks pop. Well, actually it's more like the opposite of pop. The blacks look very black. Anyway, so these dark, neon, glowworm areas looked so good on the Switch. Getting the yo-yo will give us the ability to press switches that are in hard to reach areas, as well as using it to lure certain animals towards it. Trekking through the rest of the section, we'll get rooms of pure nightmare and some form of cat prison. I know the lore is purposely vague and abstract, but I just gotta ask, who the hell put these cats in cages? Towards the end of the section, we get to pull a silly prank on an ostrich in a giant hamster ball by drowning it. All in the name of opening a door to another flame. Now, returning to the ghost dog area, as tempting as taking the disc is, and technically I totally still could, the more beginner-friendly route is to just skip it for now. Going through the first part of the northwestern area will eventually give us the mock disc, and if you're thinking what I'm thinking, then you know we have to Indiana Jones this and switch out the discs back at the start. Finally, we get to play around with this thing. The disc is another item that can be used to press switches, but is also capable of switching levers. If that's not enough for you, it's also possible to jump on and ride the disc. Yet another example of a hidden technique an item has. You can ride it until you're stopped by a wall or one of the many violent dogs in the area. Yeah, so those dogs really want to take a bite out of you. Luckily, using the disc, you're able to distract them, or hiding in the many tunnels where they can't crawl. Except that one! At the end of this area, we come across a giant statue of 2 dogs, and it looks like something belongs there? Uh-oh. Yeah, so hopefully you spent your time learning the area, because now you have to do the whole thing again while an invincible ghost dog chases you. I love how the game gives you this false sense of security that getting the mock disc is all you need to avoid having this dog chase you. Luckily, if you have another certain item I haven't mentioned yet, you can make this whole thing a lot more simpler. Placing the mock disc in its intended spot will eradicate the ghost, allowing you to collect another flame. Now that we have 3 out of 4, we can return to the Bubble Wand area and finish it off with our newfound items. Going down south, we can continue our journey through the winter tundra area, filled with penguins, seahorses, and whales that have no problem eating you whole. Finishing this area gives us our 4th and final flame. Taking them to the center area and lighting the 4 statues of the bosses will unlock a new area down below. Now before we go any further, I have to warn everyone that viewer discretion is advised due to just how spooky this last area is. The calm, ethereal environment we've been hearing throughout the game is replaced by a deep, guttural alarm sound. And dropping into the final area, we're met with these strange cat creatures that act not unlike Boos from Mario. The second you have your back turned, their lanky limbs limbs will start to shift towards you, where they'll use their eyes to flashbang 1 heart of HP from you. If you manage to escape this area, you collect yet another item that can be used to ward off evil entities, including the ghost water you may have encountered in your flame fetch quest. Once you continue, however, you'll be confronted by a creature known as the Manticore. I don't know how accurate this is or where the scorpion tail fits in, but hey, it's a pretty creepy looking creature, so that's good enough for me. With a careful combination of the lantern and various other items, you navigate this last room, pressing all 4 buttons needed to proceed. Once dropping down the final area, pressing a detonator will begin an explosive fireworks display, which not only seem to eviscerate the Manticore, but also marks the ending of Animal Well. Wow, what a nicely paced, tight package of a game, all done within a single layer. Okay, so if it wasn't obvious from the way I teed up the whole layer thing, this game's main story of collecting the flames is only the beginning. Sure, the bulk of the rooms have already been discovered, but you're not even close to completing the game. Not yet. There's a whole other collectible that until now I've neglected to even mention. Throughout your journey, you've probably come across mini puzzles or secrets that rewarded you with a collectible egg. There are a total of 64 hidden eggs around the map for you to find, and if you're like me, you stupidly thought you'd actually collected a lot by the time you reached the first ending. No, I had like 15 or something by this point, so you can imagine my confusion when I apparently had almost 50 more to collect, most of them probably hiding in rooms I'd already visited, not to mention the empty item slots that seem to indicate there were still more of those to come across as well. But first, let's travel through this new area we discovered by finishing the game. We get the key to someone's house, where we get the fanny pack, allowing us to hold a total of 6 firecrackers instead of 3, and the stopwatch from a wild squirrel. The stopwatch gives us an in-game timer in the pause menu, updating us on just how long we've been exploring the well. It's at this point you'll probably realise that the chimes you hear every so often seem to happen at the top of the hour based on your playtime, almost as if it's coming from a clock. This clock, perhaps? Apart from being a visual representation of our time in this game, the 3 doors in front of the clock specify speedrun times we must beat to collect these statues to fill the house behind us. The statues are cool in that they carry over different save files, meaning you don't have to worry about getting a so-called perfect save file just to get them all. Otherwise, this no-death statue you get from this area would be almost impossible to get if we're also supposed to beat the game in under half an hour. Luckily, that's not the case. In that very same room, you may also notice skulls piling up. These skulls represent your deaths in-game. Just as their absence would help you collect this statue, their presence will help you get the chest on top, containing the upgraded bubble wand. Now you can spawn an infinite amount of bubbles instead of just one at a time. If we continue past the speedrun clock, we come across a weird cosmic looking donut that looks like a bonus ring from Sonic. At this point though, we just pass and move on. It's time to collect the rest of the eggs that are left scattered around the infinite and apparently looping well. Luckily, there are some new items that we can unlock that will help us with exactly that. Just left of the center area is what we in the egg collecting business like to call the egg room, guarded by a mystical peacock. This is where all of your eggs will come to be stored throughout the game. From just coming in here, we can collect stamps to use on the map to mark points of interest. This is where noticing a single missing pixel on the map can really make the difference between collecting an egg and not. After collecting 8 eggs, a door will open, giving us access to one of the most important tools you have when traversing the well, the flute. You would typically get the flute much earlier than the post-game in a regular playthrough, but I'm mentioning it now just to really focus in on how useful it is when you're trying to get from one side of the map to the other, looking for eggs. Once getting the flute, you'll probably begin to notice these animal head portals that open up when you play. Using this bird head, we can enter the fast travel room. Now I know I've said this before, but this is where everything starts to feel a whole lot more freeing. The only thing missing is a way to get to this room instantly. Well, they thought of that too. Heading down south, this little fish creature starts to sing a peculiar tune. Manage to repeat it on the flute, you'll teleport to the center of the fast travel room. Learning this fish's tune was one of the best things I figured out by myself in the game. The bulk of the game I played alongside my brother, and we would share our answers and theories for how to complete certain puzzles. A real community spirit was definitely something Billy Basso was reaching for when he designed this game. That will get a whole lot more literal in the next layer, but for now, let's focus on the eggs. The next item you receive after collecting 16 eggs is the pencil, and it's basically useless. 32 eggs, we get a brand new practical item, the top. Using the top in specific places will dig up the dirt, revealing secret passages or chests. It's also an additional item you can use to distract the dogs. Using it up near the speedrun clock, we can unlock the pedometer, which shows our step counter in the game that we can use to unlock more statues. If you're feeling really nice, let's head back to the poor cats locked in cages. Hidden around the area are flute codes you can use to free them, and if you manage to find their hideaway, Mama Cat will unlock yet another item for your collection. The wheel isn't terribly useful. It's slightly faster than walking, but doesn't do great up big steps. But its real use comes from using it at select locations to unlock and slide blocks around. After a long while of searching though, you may notice that there must be new entire areas for you to explore for more eggs. That's when it's time to start collecting the medals. On your quest, you may discover areas that require an item to enter. One of them is even in the tutorial section. These areas are souped up, harder sections only meant for the hardcoreiest of Wellians. Well, actually, they're mostly just a room or two. All three routes, the S, the E, and the K medal routes, do however give you a new item. It's really surprising just how much of this game is actually beyond the first credits. I know some seasoned Metroidvania players probably find this pretty normal. But for me, while the main game was a fun, atmospheric platforming joy, the egg collection part of the game really gives you the freedom to explore and decipher the well like one big puzzle box. Completing the S route will give you the remote, which can be used as a substitute to the levers in rooms that have a comm tower inside. In the route itself, it can be used to play a simplified version of Snake. Hey, look at me go! The E medal route is cool. Throughout the game, you'll come across unlit candles and matches in chests. If you find all the matches and light all the candles, not only will you destroy a lot of those pesky ghosts, but you'll unlock a door located just before the spawn area. This is where you get the E medal. Taking it beyond the tundra, you can unlock a cool deep sea area that you'll probably need the lantern for. Towards the bottom, a fleshless eel will start singing a song. Copying the song on the flute will unlock a new fast travel head, leading you to another item, the UV light. The UV light, like most items, adds even more puzzle opportunities in areas you've already visited. Using it around the well, particularly around these black bricks, will give you clues in what to do to complete puzzles. There are also some pieces of lore found with the UV light, though it still remains pretty abstract. The last medal route is of course the K route. If you find the big statue with the kangaroo that houses the K route, the 3 firecrackers that lay below him serve as a clever secret for what you must do. Finding the kangaroo and using a firecracker will give you one of 3 total K shards to make the K medal. If you're having trouble figuring out which rooms the kangaroo spawns in, using the UV light will actually label which rooms he can appear. Once unlocking the K route, we get the final item. I promise this time, the final item. The bouncy ball. Using it in this route and a couple other places, we can play mini versions of the game Breakout. This item is kind of annoying to use though. Letting it go off screen will make every block it broke spawn back, which can just be unnecessarily frustrating. Luckily, it's the item we use by far the least. With all of our new toys, it wouldn't be too long until we collect all 64 eggs. Finally, we can receive our reward. The elusive 65th egg. Taking it to an incubator you may have discovered earlier, you can hatch a cute little chicken. Or maybe another manticore, sure! The second manticore boss encounter will require a few of the new items you've unlocked. Fun fact, if you have the required items, you can actually use the first manticore to achieve the second ending. And finally, after stunning the manticore into submission, we can jump into its gaping mouth and escape the well. So there you have it, Animal Well's second ending. Now we can move on to yet another game. Oh, wait. What if I told you that there was one more collectible to go for? 16 secret bunnies crawl the halls of the well. Not many of them obvious to find. Actually, most of them I'd describe as quite ridiculous, but nonetheless needed to achieve the third ending. Going into detail about how to get these bunnies would kinda just be me regurgitating a playthrough. And while I am sharing my experience in a playthrough-esque way, I think I'd rather just mention a few of my favourite ways to get these bunnies. Finding a secret area and using the disc very precisely to ride your way through thin walls of spikes. Finding the face flute code circle and using it to play a song based on the faces that pop up when you use the controller on the TV. Waiting idle for roughly 3 minutes until a bunny comes to you in a dream. Using the pencil, yes that pencil, you can connect the dots with a bunch of stone pillars around the map and convert the numbers you get from that into a flute song. Finding this bulb art and coinciding it with each bulb used on the save file screen, then starting a new file in every save file, noting which way the sparks go from every bulb when you spawn, and stitching it together to create a flute song. Starting from here, find a way to get to the room with a comm tower, switch it and then drown, spawning yourself between the 2 switch blocks. Using the controller and top, open up the area underneath the mural bunny and discover a puzzle piece. Now with that piece, go online and find 49 other people that have different pieces from you, share them around and finish the mural. And lastly, my favourite, Using the UV light on the eggs and the chest where you got the flute, use the different lines to convert it all into an extremely long 64-chain note flute song. Remembering the upside down egg should be read as upside down. Play it to get the office key. Go and unlock the office, and using the computer, send a print file job to your actual computer and fold it into an origami bunny. And using the bunny itself and the instructions, convert the numbers into a flute code. The bunnies I just listed are probably the craziest ones of the bunch. I've seen fans of the Metroidvania genre claim that this stuff is just par for the course in the genre. Being new to it myself, it was definitely a shock to see what lengths you must go to collect them all. And it doesn't even end there. Since we have the office unlocked, we can use the UV light on the blackboard to get some sort of code deciphering instructions for the direction of the bunny ears. All our secret bunnies are being stored in the second dimension that we can access at any time through the ring portal beside the clock. Stitching all the bunny ear codes together will give you directions you can use when jumping into a manticore and travelling screen to screen. I definitely did not have the willpower to do all this myself, so if you're anything like me, I'd recommend just searching up the path online. At the end of said path, an island with a giant bunny can be found. Allowing it to eat you and travelling out its other end will grant you special powers. The ability to turn into, like, a moth? Flying thing? It's kind of a fun but useless power this far into the game, since there is officially nothing else to collect. We have finished Animal Well. What more could there even be to this game? Okay, fine. There's one more thing you can do if you're someone who thought the bunny ear binary code was too easy. I googled the answers for this part, so I haven't personally done it, so forgive me if I don't get this quite right. But by apparently doing very specific things, like forcibly getting the wheel early, or stocking up on hearts so the chameleon doesn't kill you in one hit, or managing to collect every acorn from every squirrel, shoutouts to Billy Basso for putting me in the game by the way, much appreciated, you will sometimes be met with something known as a hex code. These codes appear as utter gibberish, but internet sleuths were able to put together a map that seems to lead you to yet another secret island. Heading to that location will land you in what the public has deemed Time Capsule Island. Topping up the dirt and opening the chest inside will reward you with some snazzy headphones and a congratulatory message from Billy himself.
The date is March 12th, 2024. This is Billy Basso, the developer of the game you're playing.
I won't play much of this just because I do think it's quite special to hear for yourself, but we do also have an appearance from someone you may know from YouTube.
Hey, it's Donkey.
And that, I promise, is where Animal Well truly ends. Probably. Maybe. Data miners are always trying to figure out whether there are any more secrets to gather from the well, but apart from what appears to be a debug mode item and a few hidden animals, nothing else of note has been found. Well, except for this secret room, with secret wall art. Look, admittedly, there are a few questions that still need answering, but as far as my experience with the game goes, this is where it ends for now. Animal Well was definitely some of the most fun I've had in a puzzle-related game in quite some time. It is, to be fair, my first full foray into the Metroidvania genre, but so far I've been irresistibly invested in the mere nature of this type of game. Part of me wants to jump over and give something like the Outer Wilds a try, or maybe Tunic, dropping into what appears on the surface to be a simple puzzle platformer, only for the layers to peel back as you play, just to show you how much you missed, will forever be etched into my mind as a pure and peak gaming experience. Thank you, Billy Basso, for this absolute treasure of a game you've created. Now finally I can sit back and gaze upon my 100% save file, knowing that I have successfully strip-mined the game for any morsel of gameplay and secrets, with absolutely nothing left to find. Uh-oh.